Welcome to the Banderpod, the bookish, bantering podcast of Bandersnatch Books. We're a small press publisher of treasures found off the beaten path for lovers of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I'm Annie Beth Donahue, and today I'm joined by the founder of Reshelving Alexandria, Ambre Sautter. Ambre manages an active Facebook group as well as a Substack. Guided by her faith, she finds purpose in fostering home libraries that become sanctuaries of wisdom, imagination, and joy. Ambre, welcome to the Banderpod.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right, let's start with the obvious question. What is Reshelving Alexandria?
Yeah, so Reshelving Alexandria is an online community of 20,000 plus home library builders. We help families to evaluate books, think in terms of content considerations, and just be very intentional about curating the shelves that they get to live with every day. And then Renewed Books is the publishing side of that work, where we're bringing expanded reprints of out-of-print books back into circulation and publishing new stories by living authors, all with the goal of, like you said, putting good, true, and beautiful books into the hands of families instead of just letting them tragically disappear.
So what inspired the name? Do you have like a big interest in the actual history of the Library of Alexandria, or was it just a good metaphor for what you're doing?
I actually came up with the name 2 years before I knew what it was going to be for. And I actually didn't come up with it. My husband did. I was considering what bookish things I wanted to do and was thinking about maybe starting a YouTube channel. And we were just brainstorming names. And so he came up with Reshelving Alexandria, and I just felt the weight of it. And I was like, that's a thing. It's not this thing, but that's going to be a thing. And so then when we started the Facebook group, it just was a natural fit for what we were trying to accomplish.
I like that. And when you think about that analogy, are you thinking like, okay, we have these works that potentially could be lost or, maybe need to be introduced to a new generation of readers and learners, or?
One of my favorite things about the Alexandrian Library that a lot of people may not know is that the librarians were pirates. And every time a ship landed in Alexandria, which had a big shipping port, the librarians were one of the first to board the ship, and they would take any written works off of the ship back to their library, transcribe them, and return them before the ships left again. And that was one of the ways that they built such a huge library of works from all around the world. And that's how they got old works and modern works. And I think that when we started Reshelving Alexandria, I had come out of another bookish community that I loved, but it very heavily, people were of the opinion that old books equaled good books and that nothing good was being written. And I felt that that just really missed, one, the Holy Spirit, who is living and active today and still working through artists, right? And also, there's a lot of old books that aren't good books and fell to the wayside for a reason. And so I really just wanted us to be able to build a community where we were assessing books based on their personal merit, not based on their age. And one of the things that I mentioned in the beginning in describing our community that we are known for is we talk a lot about what we call content considerations. So instead of simply labeling books as good or bad, we try to give families a framework for thinking carefully about what is in that particular book and what their child might be prepared for at a given season, or what they may be prepared for in a given season, and how that specific story might shape that specific reader. And so it's been really encouraging to see that idea and even just the language of content considerations spreading into the broader conversation through friends and fellow reading communities like Redeemed Readers stopped doing book warnings because it didn't feel like it encompassed enough. And now they do content considerations. And it's because I might say this book has witches in it, which your family might immediately be like, we don't do witches. But guess what? I'm talking about the Bible, right? Like the Bible has witches in the Old Testament. Let's consider what the content is based on the context and the further story. Is this a redemptive story, or is this glorifying evil? I feel really passionately that a lot of people miss what true means in good, true, and beautiful. because true is often really hard things that you have to wrestle with. True is often the ugly parts of humanity. But then the good and the beautiful is that redemption story and that resurrection that can happen and God bringing beauty from ashes. And so I just feel like content considerations really helps us to put the responsibility of thinking about the book back on the parents instead of them just saying, well, somebody red flagged it and I'm moving on, to be like, why did they red flag it? And what does that mean for my reader and my family?
We actually have a very similar philosophy at Bandersnatch Books. That's why when we choose what to publish, it's not a black and white line of we like example, you must not have witches in your story.
Mhm.
Obviously we do have some in our stories, but it's context. And does this glorify something that should not be glorified? Does this point to truth?
Mhm.
It's not just, is this, is this story too scary or have a bad word in it? It's the big picture for sure.
Yeah.
Also, I did not know the librarians were pirates.
Yeah.
That's I'm gonna have to look into that some more. That's very interesting. So, what you just said leads in very nicely to another question that I had about how you do that curation of libraries for each family. It seems like your main focus is that you curate libraries for each family's unique journey. And that might include understanding if a child has different sensitivities or if they
Mhm.
have different learning needs, or maybe they are neurodiverse. So, can you tell me some more about that part of helping families with their choices?
Yeah. That's been one of the things that we've worked the hardest to communicate within our community, especially as we bring on new members, is the fact that, like, if somebody says, here's a content consideration, they're not saying, I think this is bad. They're saying, I think your reader might, that you as the assessor of the book might want to know this for your reader for a million reasons. So, for example, like racism, that's one where a book might have really egregious racist stuff in it that I would not want to hand my child for their free read, because I don't want them to maybe read through a whole series of books where this is not addressed as a bad thing and have them think this is just the way life is, because, my kids are fairly sheltered and might not be in a situation where they realize I don't see this happening anymore. And so they might not make that connection with their neurodivergencies. They might see this as a blueprint. But it might be a book where I want to sit down with my kids and say, let's actually look at what it was like in the 1950s. Let's look at what it was like in the 1860s. And we're going to read this book for a historical viewpoint. And so we encourage people to be like very specific when giving content considerations in the group. Like, we don't let people just say, did you like this book? Because I don't know you. I don't know what a yes or no answer from you might be, one of 20,000 people. But we require people to ask for a review with content considerations, because that forces the content considerations back into context. So, for example, I just republished a book on Nellie Bly by Iris Noble, and I have loved Nellie Bly my whole life and read so many books about her, and I am convinced that she was on the spectrum, because she has zero people skills in her own life, but is perfectly able to mirror people, to be an investigative reporter and pretend to be anyone she wants to be. And that's just one of the things. But so I would say, I believe that Nellie Bly is neurodivergent based on these reasons. And so this might be a book that's encouraging to your neurodivergent reader, or this might be a book where your kid would naturally be like, what's wrong with this person? And give a really good conversation of nothing's wrong with her. Her brain just ticks differently, and she was able to do some really cool things because of it. And so we encourage people to just be very, very clear. Different families are looking for different things for different discussions or different experiences that they're going through. And we just want to make sure that they have all the information, because the responsibility for raising the kids is on them. So,
Yeah, I like that. You're allowing the families, they make an informed choice,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. We definitely
So
fall into the group of any reading is good reading or all reading is good reading, which a lot of people do adhere to. We think that the author is looking over the shoulder of the reader and that the books are forming your moral imagination. And so it does matter. And we want people to know who they're reading and what they're reading as they provide the why they're reading.
I know you said that before Reshelving Alexandria, you were kind of thinking about YouTube or some other way to communicate some of these thoughts that you were having. But how did you realize that starting Reshelving Alexandria was something that you, like you personally, needed to do? And then how did you decide what that would look like?
Yeah, I started it with another woman, and what we initially discovered we both had interest in was complete book lists. And so we had found different authors and series of vintage books that we really liked, and we were having the hardest time tracking down what all the books in the series were. And so when we started this group, it was with the intention of building out complete book lists for people that wanted to add those books to their shelves. And then that that previous bookish community that I mentioned having been in, they felt threatened by what we were doing and did not grasp that we were trying to do something to complement what they were already doing. And so they removed us from their group. And so at that point, we were like, oh, well, we just need a full bookish community at this point because what we were getting there, we're not getting anymore. And so that was when we started just having much broader guidelines for the types of books that we were talking about and moved quickly into okay, not just specific series for our shelves, but what are all the good books that we want for our shelves. The woman I was working with, she always joked that when we started this project, she believed she could eventually own all the best books and just thought there were just so few of them that that would be the outcome, and then very quickly realized no, there's so many really amazing books out there that people aren't talking about or have forgotten about. And we have so many wonderful members of our community that are women who run private lending libraries and have been reading and curating for decades. And we have a bunch of retired homeschool moms who, again, have been reading and curating for decades. And they just bring so much wisdom and odd books that they have found over the years that people have not been talking about that we've never heard of, and they're from all around the world. And so we're getting a whole bunch of international new to us authors and titles, and it's just really fun.
I love that. I think that if people didn't know anything about you or about Reshelving Alexandria, they might have a misconception. Oh, this is something for like homeschool families that are looking for books for school, but that's not really the case. So you just described a few of the people that you are have in your community. Can you expand on that just a little bit more? Like, who is this really for?
That's a great question. And I love that you brought up the confusion aspect because the confusion exists even within our community. One of the biggest things that I fight against is the belief that we are only about children's books, because while children's books are lovely and my favorite, there are a lot of really good adult books out there as well and adult readers for your home library. And so I think that since the majority of our group are people based on Facebook analytics, the majority of our group are people that are of age to still have children in the home. That is their focus, is their voracious readers that they just can't keep up with, and they are not in a season for reading themselves necessarily, but we have definitely had an uptick of people who are reading for themselves and doing reading challenges for themselves. We do 12 book and 52 book and a teen book challenge and a children's book challenge and a family read aloud challenge every year. And those have really helped encourage women and men back into reading who have been on break for a while for one reason or another. And so we have a bunch of authors in our group and retired teachers and school librarians, and we have had an uptick of men in the last 5 years, which I've really been excited by. A lot of dads have joined and are doing their own personal reading journeys or looking for good stories to read aloud with their families. And we have small publishers that are there that are keeping their eye on what the people are looking for and what people want to add to their shelves. And we have a lot of teenagers too that have joined as they've gotten older, and they've outgrown just looking over their mom's shoulders for book recommendations, and now they're there asking for recommendations themselves. And so it's really just a beautiful community. We have a lot of people have left Facebook and come back with incognito accounts just for Reshelving Alexandria because it was the one peaceful place that they found on the internet. And we are very intentional about our culture. And we only let like 10 new people in a week, because if you grow too quickly, then your culture changes whether you want it to or not, because people aren't really informed as to what's happening. So we have a very, very long wait list at this point, but we're not here for the numbers. We're here for what we've created, and we don't want to lose that.
That's an important thing to mention, the management aspect of a group like this and trying to herd the cats or whatever you want to call it. I actually haven't looked to see if you're the only moderator. Do you have help doing that, or is it mostly you?
So we have a community of groups. We have a homeschool community. We have, like, specifically for homeschool questions, we have a marketplace for buying and selling used books. And I have a really dynamic team in the marketplace that just completely runs that. And I would not be able to keep up with that situation. And then we have a few people, we have a few lovely women who help to moderate the main group, but primarily there are two of us that do the lion's share of it, in large part because I'm a little controlling about it. I need to know what conversations are happening so that I can steer them in the right direction. We have a graphic we throw up immediately in some threads that just say answer the original question or move on. So I scan probably 99.8% of the posts that go in, and I'm the main approver for those. So
Yeah, that's a lot of work, but I'm sure it's appreciated because we've all probably been in groups where the moderation wasn't what it could have been, and it ended up just being unhelpful, or there were arguments or things like that. So
yeah, our moderating team really offers me a good sounding board. Like, they're who I go to first when I'm like, okay, here's the situation that's happening. I want to burn it all down. How do I move through this in peace? Because sometimes
Mhm.
it's just like, why are adults who I respect and admire acting like toddlers right now in my home? Because I feel like this group is my living room, and it's just like I've had these people in my living room for years now, and I just want everyone to get along. So
Yes. Yeah. I know we just spent time talking about how this group is not just for homeschoolers, but I am going to ask you, you do homeschool,
I do. Hmm.
and so, so you do know about it. Do you have any advice that is particular to homeschoolers
Sure.
regarding this?
Yeah. So I have five kids, ages, well, they came every 3 years, so ages 7 to 19. And I think that one of the most important lessons that I learned along the way was, in the beginning, I was terrified that I was going to waste my time not reading the best book on any given subject to my kids. And so I just was paralyzed and didn't really read much of anything for a couple years. They had audiobooks and I was letting them listen through the classics, but I felt paralyzed on what I was going to bring as a contribution to the reading relationship. And then I finally just realized something is better than nothing. And that has kind of been one of my guide stones in homeschooling 5 very neurodiverse kids is just something is better than nothing. And when I feel stuck and I feel like I can't figure out what's right for this kid and what the perfect thing is that's going to make the sun break through the clouds, that something is better than nothing. And that very often when we are in motion is when we discover the thing that does work.
Yeah, that's very true. Because if you're not in motion, you're definitely not going anywhere or
Yes.
doing anything. So,
Treading water, it just wears you out.
mhm. So if I'm remembering correctly, there are free aspects to Reshelving Alexandria, and I think there are also like paid aspects to it through the Substack. Is that correct?
Yes. So all of our articles and book lists and our 2000 plus book literary catalog of books that we have read and written content considerations for and tagged with topics. And then we ranked them based on reader interest level versus reading level because we have so many delayed readers that we were like, oh, this is really what matters to the majority of the people looking at this. So we have that free literary catalog, and that's all available through our website. And we also have a podcast, Stories from the Ashes, where we interview a whole bunch of authors and illustrators and publishers similar to what you guys do, except I think I talk a whole lot longer than you guys do. So people often break up how many times they have to listen to one episode, but that's all free. And then we kind of just have a feel free to support us if you can. And with that level comes our online book clubs are free then for people that are financially supporting. And we often have printable versions of our book lists that then are included for those members. But it's really more of a, if you can support what we're doing, we would love for you to support it because we put money and time into this. But at the same time, my priority is I don't want anyone to not have the resources that they need because of their own personal lack of resources. And so we are trying to find a good middle ground for that, where the workers who are worthy of their wages get paid in the community that are helping and serving, and also things remain accessible to people. Our book clubs that we do we just started charging for those, but also if you can't afford them, you can still attend them. So we're trying to figure that out. But yeah, I will say that our book lists that we put out, I have read all the books that are on the book lists, which is kind of unique to our community because one of the things that was really shocking for me on this journey was realizing how many people that I had put my trust in their book recommendations weren't actually reading the books. Like it still just
Ooh,
blows my mind to say that. But they were
yeah.
going off of recommendations from other people. And when you start tracking that back, you realize at no stage did anyone read this book. Somebody
Mhm.
recommended it 150 years ago because it was something that was newly published at that time. And then all of a sudden, the trickle down is that we have people recommending it today that have no idea what's in it. And so it's been very important to me when putting together themed lists that they are books that we have read.
It's a benefit for you as well.
Yes, yes.
I actually did not think about that in relation to, say, book lists of books that were already published. I did have an idea about that in the publishing industry because we have had, I say we, I don't mean like Bandersnatch books personally. I mean, the publishing industry in general has had a problem with people recommending books or writing blurbs to recommend books that are newly published that didn't actually read the book.
Mhm.
Or, they invite you on their podcast to talk about your book. And the interviewer didn't actually read your book. They just went by what somebody else told them. And, you've seen occasionally there'll be retractions or things where people, oh, actually, this is not a good book,
Mhm.
but it took so long to find out because no one was actually reading the book. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But speaking of that, I believe you have read some of the Bandersnatch books. And if I recall correctly, you liked The Red Door.
Yeah, my girls and I, the year of our house fire, we got to be beta readers for The Red Door while Rachel was writing it. And It was just such a bright spot in a very stormy season for us. And then I was so sad after a year when she had kind of shelved it and moved on to other projects when she'd shopped it around and no one had shown interest. So when I think I'd seen a post from Carrie that you guys had your submissions were open for manuscripts. I reached out to her and I was like, I really think that you would fit well with them and I want you to submit it because I really want this published because I want to share it with Reshelving Alexandria. And then I reached out to Carrie and I was like, I love this book and if you guys print it, I will recommend it. So I was playing Emma with Matchmaker behind the scenes. I really want this book. So we're so happy that it's in print and it got such a lovely cover too.
We're glad that you pointed Rachel in our direction because we love the Red Door and our readers love the Red Door. So it was definitely a good pick. And I just think that's so cool that you basically were on the ground floor on that one. It's like you saw it from the beginning to the end. So
Yeah, it's a good book.
and if our listeners have never read The Red Door, a lot of times we say it's like The Giver, but with hope. We call it hope punk. So, all right. So, one thing that we do here on our interviews is we have these popcorn questions for a quick answer. So,
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a few of those. What are you reading right now?
I am currently reading The Unknown Ajax by Georgette Heyer, who is my new favorite, newly discovered for myself author. I just finished The Talisman Ring with my 16-year-old, and I would describe that one as a combination of like what would happen if The Princess Bride and The Scarlet Pimpernel and Jane Austen had a book baby. It would have been The Talisman Ring, and it was so unexpectedly delightful that I immediately started two more of her books, one with my teenagers and then The Unknown Ajax by myself so I could go at my own speed. And then I've just like ditched my teenagers because I'm like hyper focused on The Unknown Ajax because I'm really enjoying it. And then I'm currently leading a book club going through the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so we just finished the Fellowship of the Ring and starting the Two Towers this week, which is always delightful. And then I am a glutton for punishment. And so I am rereading Sunrise on the Reaping just because I need a book to cry through all over again. And we are going out to the Hope Words conference.
Uh-huh.
And
Carrie will be there.
we'll get to meet Carrie there, which we're very excited about. But my girls keep saying that I can't avoid the ending of Everything Sad is Untrue any longer, and I need to finish it because it was just, it's so good. That book is so good that I don't want it to end. And so I just kind of like stopped right before the end. And they're like, you have to finish it before you go meet the author. Like you
You
just
do.
have to do it. So we're gonna finish it. And that's kind of been our in limbo book of late. And then I'm reading
So
101 Dalmatians aloud to the little kids, which kind of went on a pause because my 11-year-old absconded with the book and finished it, and I made him return it. So now we can all finish listening to it together.
that's hilarious. So it sounds like, there are some people who say, I only read one book at a time. That's not you.
No, why would I do that?
I don't know. I don't subscribe
I
to that
need to
either.
I That's not even all that I'm reading right now. That's just all that came like off the top of my mind because I have to have a book for every mood. And if I'm in a
Mhm.
happy mood, I need a happy book. And if I'm in like a melancholy mood, I can't read a happy book and vice versa. And so then what? I just don't read when I'm feeling those feelings? No, that is absurd. So,
I totally agree. It has to do with how do I feel right now? How
yeah.
much time do I have to
Yeah.
read in this moment? What time of day is it? Like all
Mhm.
those things.
Yep. How
So
much sun
I'm with
comes
you.
out? Do I feel like reading with my eyes or reading with my ears?
Yep.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So this may be hard based on what we just talked about. It kind of depends on your mood as far as what you're reading. But do you have a favorite book in your personal collection? And if you can't decide based on like content or the story, it could just be because it's a cool book, like printed, really neat cover or something like that.
Yeah. So I I have a favorite book that falls under the category of books I am liking so much I will not finish it. Like it may never happen for me. And so the book is called The Token, and it's by, I think the author is Shellersberg, but the illustrator is Steel Savage. And that's how I found this book, because I do not think that there is a more man's name out there than Steel Savage. Like, that is the illustrator's name, that is his given birth name, and I think it is epic. And I have collected his children's books, and then I came across this one. And it is basically a Middle Ages fairy tale for adults, and it wrecks me. I love it so much. I have read the first two-thirds of this book 3 times now. And my poor little brain is like, I've never read anything like it, and I'll never read anything like it again. So I can't finish it because then it will be done. So I will probably just continue to restart this book a million times. Eventually, I will finish it, even if it's just in heaven. But I think that's I've bought it multiple times. I had my mother-in-law read it. She loved it. She said great ending. So I know that it's not like a dud book.
Good, good.
But yeah, but I love his illustration style. And you only get them in the hardcover copy. Like the paperback reprint does not have Steel Savage's illustration. So that's one of my favorite books, because even though I haven't read the whole thing, I have looked at all the pictures, and they're beautiful. I love them.
That's really neat. I've never heard of that, and we may have to look it up. So here is a silly question. If you had to rename your group to some other Egyptian monument, what would it be and why?
Hmm. I don't know. Probably like the green scarab beetle, just because I like the color green, and those bugs get everywhere. And I think that good books get everywhere and under your skin too. So
Ooh, yeah, I like that. That's very good. Okay, so you mentioned your 11-year-old absconding with a book. Do you have any other funny stories like that?
I do. That 11-year-old, it turns out, is a full-time absconder, because when we rebuilt our house, I turned one of our dining room walls into a built-in bookshelf, built-in bookcase. Here, I'll flash it at you real quick.
Ooh, amazing.
And it's where I store all of my biography series. So we have the Landmark series and the Signature Classics and our Childhood Famous American books and all of our Messner biographies. But it is packed full. Like, I have overflow in another room. The shelf is always full. And I started noticing that all of a sudden there was breathing room between books, and that there was space on this one shelf. And like the crazy person that I am, I'm just like, oh, I must have missed that, and started filling in the space. But like the space kept reopening. And then one day, having given it not much more thought, my 11-year-old Everhart, who is named for Leonard Everett Fisher, one of my favorite illustrators. So Everhart came up to me, and he's like, I just finished this book on Chief Pontiac. It's so good. I'm going to go put it with the others. And I'm like, great. And I hear him going upstairs, and I'm like, Ever, come back. And I'm like, where are you going with that? He's like, I'm putting it with the others. He's like, when I finish reading a book, I've been putting it on my own bookshelf upstairs as a souvenir. How cute is that?
Ah,
A souvenir, like
that's
on
so cute.
social media, on Book Talk, there are a whole bunch of people that exclusively listen to audiobooks, but then they buy the book because it's a pretty book, and they put it on their shelf, and they call it a trophy. And so I'm familiar with the concept of a trophy shelf, but Everhart calling them souvenirs, that's what it is, right? Like, a book
Mhm.
is a journey to another place. He's gone somewhere. He's gone in space and time to a different person's life, to a different person's world, and lived experience. And this is the souvenir that he's brought back, is this book. So I am slowly losing my biography collection to my son's shelf, and I am not complaining. I am quite content to do so.
I love that. He really did coin the perfect term because
Yes.
it's a trip. You
Yeah.
have gone somewhere.
Yeah. So I love that for him. He's my first voracious reader, because we have so much dyslexia in the house. and that's been foreign to me. That was a really I was reading at a fourth grade level by the time I was 5, and then it just like kept flying from there. And so this has been an interesting thing to navigate. So when he started picking up books and reading through them in 1 or 2 days, I was like, this I know this. So I've been more than happy to have somebody that's reading through our physical books and not just our audiobooks.
That's a great story for sure. I love that. Hopefully, maybe some of our listeners will start using the term souvenir when they
Yes.
refer to the books that they've finished as well. Well, Amber, it was great to have you on. We enjoyed learning a lot more about Reshelving Alexandria and the mission behind that. And we were excited to find out about pirates, and also that you were kind of like the pre-discoverer of the Red Dwarf for Bandersnatch Books.
It was great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And listeners, may you find bookish treasures in your wanderings off the beaten path. Thanks for listening in to our conversation today on the Banderpod. We hope you'll check out our full catalog at bandersnatchbooks.com. The Banderpod is produced by Rachel S. Donahue, A. B. Donahue, and Carolyn Claire Gibbons. Audio engineering by S. D. G. Morgan. Artwork by Evelyn Warnamundi. Many thanks to our friend Chris Slayton of Son of Laughter for our theme song, Cricket in a Jar. Find links and more in the show notes.